Good afternoon, Reverend Richardson.
Good afternoon.
This is Miss Vonnie from Fame News. Today we are going to do something a little different besides our daily information of Black history. Right now you're going to give us a nice interview of what do you remember during those times, as we call it back in the day, but what is it that you may remember growing up back in those times?
Well, I remember coming up, we were limited in going in places like stores. We were going to the stores, they had black restroom that didn't work. They had water fountain, black and white. Really used to call it colored and white. And we go to the colored one, never worked. And coming up, I learned that a black person, if you're walking on the sidewalk, you have to hold your head down because that's how they came out of slavery. They didn't respect the black people who came out of slavery. And I learned from my father and grandmother mostly, because my grandmother came out of slavery and my father, he born after slavery, grew up here in Mount Pleasant, and I heard a lot from them on what took place here in the old village here. Certain areas black live, and certain areas white live, and they didn't want you to walk in the area unless you come and work. And then you come back up, we had certain areas of certain blocks. Well, I'm not going to name it all, but from Bank Street, King Street, Ferry Street, and on over to Morrison Street. Black folks would live on one side, white folks on the other side. Had a few people live up in the area we call Hillersville. That's further up in, we call it Station 8. And some folks live up there, black folks that is, and periodically they had certain areas they live in. But in the old days, we couldn't go to the white school, so we had to go to the black school, although we had a school right here in Mount Pleasant known as Lang High and Lang Elementary. But back in 1954, 55, we moved into a new school in 6 Mile area out of town of Mount Pleasant. We had to go up there to 6 Mile to school. We call it the New Lang High School. Nowadays they call it Lang Middle School. But we had some hard time and rough time to live in this community. Now I remember my father told me when time to pay taxes, you had to have a job. If you didn't have a job to get the money to pay taxes, they'll take your property away. And he told me that they had to go catch the ferry to go to Charleston and work in Charleston. And a lot of my memories come from my grandmother, as stated, and my father. Because my mother was born and raised out of Mount Pleasant, and she moved into Mount Pleasant with my father. And so it wasn't too bad in a way of speaking because we knew how to live as black folks. And our parents knew how to make do with whatever they had.
Reverend Richardson, where I work at a preschool / after school program. And a lot of my kids ask me, did they have an outhouse? Did you have an outhouse back in the day? actually they are the ones that's actually helping me with this interview because they want to know certain things that they have seen on TV, on television, or things that they have heard from their parents. So one of my students asked, uh, well, ask the person, did they have an outhouse because they couldn't have one in-house, a restroom. I remember back in the days, my grandfather used to tell me about the outhouse. That they used to have an outhouse, and I remember seeing one. But I never used one, but I remember seeing an outhouse. So one student wants to know, did your parents, grandparents have an outhouse?
To answer you about the outhouse, that's true. We had an outhouse. We didn't have no bathroom like of today. We didn't have no bathtub. So we had to use the outhouse. And the outhouse had to been approximately 50 or more feet away from the house. And they would dig a hole, build a building, and that's where the outhouse come from. Then they put the house on top of the hole, and that's where you go and, as I would say, do your business.
Okay. I will let my student know about that one. The next question I'd like to ask also, how were the churches back in those days? Seeing it on TV, I don't want to call it a building, it's more like I guess a place where it was covered and they would sit up here and people would sing songs back in those days. How were the churches? My grandparents.
Well, the church in those days, we didn't have no air conditioner, so you had to sit in there on hard pews, and you may have a pianist who tap on the piano, and the choir would sing, and the preacher had a designated place to preach from. And the buildings were old. When I came along, the buildings were old and dilapidated. And in this community, we had 3 churches. We had this church, Friendship A.M.E. Church, and my grandfather was an A.M.E., and my grandmother was a Presbyterian. We had a Presbyterian church right where the sweet shop at, but on this side of the sweet shop, on the Merrill Brown Recreation Center,
Okay.
there's a fence right near the sweet shop, and Presbyterian church used to be there. Then on the other side, we had other street, Morris Street, we had Legree Baptist Church that changed now to be Ebenezer Baptist Church. And it was an old time fashion, just like you may probably see in a movie. It's similar to that. It wasn't too far away.
I am learning something new just by listening to you talk about back in the days. Originally, I was born and raised down here, but moved to New York my younger days and came back home, went to school down here. Like you said, the schools, I did, not graduate, but I did attend Lang Middle School. Never knew that it was actually the first Lang school until I actually got down here. For some strange reason, zones were split back then, back in the 80s, I guess, early 90s. The zones were actually just split, And for some strange reason, if you lived on one side of Mount Pleasant, he went to Lang. Other side, he went to Moultrie. So I ended up going to Lang, and my brother did not want to go to Lang, so he went to Moultrie. So I understand about the schooling, and I'm learning something new every day. Well, what you were saying. In the community, what were the jobs like?
Well, if you didn't have a trade, you just pick up work as people will come through and want to know if you want to work. Some folks were going to farm. Although in Mount Pleasant, we had a farm further up across, what's that? Going up Royal Avenue, and you cross over further, 2 or 3 miles up the way, we had a farm, called them Day Farm, and during my time anyway. And it was hard getting a job, but if you had a trade, we had brick mason. Brother Charles Flood was a brick mason. He could get jobs. Then we had, well, somebody like my father, Mr. Truman Brown. They were carpenters, they got jobs. And another thing, we have lace. We didn't have lace when I was younger. We had lamplight. We had to do everything by lamplight and kerosene when I came along the way.
Something totally different, yes.
Yes.
Like walking around with the kerosene. In fact, I think I have one of those lamps at home, but it runs by batteries. But it's in good use when we don't have electricity. Well, I just want to thank you so very much for all your information. I want to just say thank you, and thank you for today and everything.
And I thank you, Ms. Hallbeck, for interviewing me, and I thank you, Brother Jenkins.
Thank you.
Thank you.